My name is Elena Marlowe. I'm 29 years old, and I carry with me 10 years of silence that feels heavier than any argument ever could. People say words hurt, but I learned early that silence cuts deeper. It lingers, it festers, and it teaches you your place in ways a scream never could. The last time my family celebrated my birthday, I was 19. 19 when my mother brought out a cake with uneven candles, my father half-heartedly sang, and my sister Vivian teased me about the way I blew out the flames. After that night, the tradition vanished. No texts, no calls, not even a lazy HBD scribbled on Facebook. At first, I excused them. I told myself they were busy, distracted, caught up in their own lives. I even convinced myself I didn't need it, that birthdays were childish, that love didn't need cake and candles to prove it was real. But each year when the date circled back on the calendar, I felt the sting of absence. It was like watching other families gather around candles while mine chose to look away, as if I wasn't worth remembering. My breaking point came at 21. I had bought myself a small cake from the corner grocery store, stuck 2 wax numbers on top, 2 and 1, and lit them. I waited at the kitchen table of my tiny apartment, expecting maybe they'd show up late. Maybe there was a surprise in store. But the cake melted, the wax dripped, and the silence remained. They later told me they lost track of time. That excuse carved itself into my chest, a reminder that I was easy to forget. And so, year after year, the silence grew. I covered bills when Dad's excuses about money thinned out. I babysat when Vivian wanted freedom from her kids. I drove Mom to doctor's appointments when she swore no one else had the time. I gave everything I had, but when my day came, I was erased, forgotten, or worse, remembered and ignored. Both felt like poison. Psychologists say children internalize neglect by creating stories to protect themselves. I did that too. I told myself, "You're too sensitive. They love you, just not like that." But deep down, I knew better. Love isn't forgetting. Love isn't silence. This year, something shifted. I wasn't 19 anymore, sobbing into a cheap bottle of rosé in a shoebox apartment. I wasn't 21 waiting for a door that never opened. I was 29 with a career that had finally rewarded me, a bonus large enough to change everything. So instead of waiting for a text that would never come, I wrote one check, a down payment. Not on an apartment, not on a condo, on a house, a lake house, mine. It wasn't just a home, it was a declaration. Floor-to-ceiling glass walls that caught the sunrise, a dock stretching into the water like a promise, and enough space for echoes of laughter that had never belonged to me. As I signed the final papers, I whispered to myself, this year, they'll remember. Not because I begged for it, but because I'll make sure they never forget me again. The morning of my 29th birthday, the lake shimmered like glass, reflecting a sky that felt as though it had been painted just for me. I walked barefoot onto the dock, clutching the keys that still smelled of metal and ink, the deed to the house safe in my desk drawer. For the first time in a decade, I wasn't waiting on anyone. No half-hearted greetings, no pity calls, just me, my house, and a new chapter. I snapped 3 photos, me holding the keys, the house glowing under the sunrise, and my reflection doubled in the lake's surface. My caption was simple, birthday gift to myself. Then I hit post. By noon, my phone lit up in a way it hadn't in years. 37 missed calls, 6 voicemails, over a dozen texts. I stared at the screen, my lips curving into a smile that was equal parts bitter and triumphant. For a decade, my birthday had been invisible to them. Now suddenly, it was a spotlight. The first voicemail was syrupy sweet, my mother's voice dripping with rehearsed affection. "Elena, honey, we just saw your post. That house is wow. We're so proud. Call us back. We want to celebrate with you." Celebrate. The word cracked inside me like glass. For 9 years, birthdays were childish. Just another day. Now, apparently, they'd rediscovered the dictionary. The next message, my father. Sharp, clipped, already edged with entitlement. "Elena, where did you get the money for that place? Don't do anything reckless. Call me before you regret it." There it was, the voice of a man who believed anything I earned belonged to the family. He never said congratulations, just control disguised as concern. But it was Vivian's text that made me laugh out loud. "Please pick up the phone. We need to talk." We, not her, not me. We. The collective that had forgotten me for years suddenly united, as if I owed them answers. Then came something different. A name I hadn't seen in months. my younger brother Ryan. His message was shorter, sharper. We should talk before this gets worse. I stared at the words, my stomach tightening. Ryan had disappeared years ago, drifting between jobs and excuses. He rarely joined family dinners, rarely picked sides. But this message, it carried a weight I couldn't quite place. What did he mean before this gets worse? I let the phone buzz on the counter, unanswered. Instead, I poured myself a glass of wine and stepped back out onto the dock. The air smelled of cedar and lake water, clean and untouched by the rot of family guilt. I watched the sun slip lower, the sky bleeding orange into the horizon. For once, I wasn't crying into cheap wine, begging to be seen. I was being seen on my terms. And yet, as the calls stacked up, a thought stirred in the back of my mind. Their sudden urgency wasn't about me, it never was. It was about what my success said about them. About appearances, about money. The silence of the lake was intoxicating, but I knew it wouldn't last. Families like mine didn't let go easily. They circled, they schemed, they demanded. And sure enough, as the evening settled in, I heard the faint crunch of tires on gravel. When I peeked through the blinds, my heart thudded. There they were. Mom, Dad, Vivian, her husband Mark, and even Ryan, standing at the gate with crossed arms and flushed faces, as if they had been wronged. The siege had begun. The pounding on my gate came like thunder, rattling the stillness of the lake morning. At first, I thought it might be the delivery truck bringing furniture I had ordered for the guest rooms, but when I parted the blinds, my chest tightened. There they stood, my mother Clara in her pressed floral blouse, my father Gerald red-faced and rigid, Vivian clutching a box with what looked like a half-melted cake, her husband Mark shifting awkwardly behind her, and Ryan leaning against the gate like he owned it. "Elena!" Mom's voice pierced the air, loud enough for the neighbors across the lake to hear. "Open the door! This is ridiculous! We're family!" Family. That word, so casually weaponized, landed like a stone hurled through glass. Where was family when I spent my birthdays alone? Candles burning down on cakes I bought for myself. Where was family when I begged for help with tuition, only to be told to be more like Vivian? Where was family when I waited at the table at 21? Cake collapsing in the heat, and no one came? I didn't move. I let them pound. Let them stew in their urgency. Every slam of a fist against the gate was a rhythm I'd heard all my life. Demands, expectations, commands disguised as care. My phone buzzed again. A text from Dad. "We're outside. We're not leaving until you let us in." I waited 20 minutes, listening to their voices echo through the trees before I finally opened the second-story window and leaned out. My hair whipped in the breeze, but my voice was steady as the lake behind me. "You forgot me for 10 years, I said. "I guess I forgot to invite you in?" The silence that followed was delicious. Mark glanced nervously over his shoulder, muttering, "The neighbors are watching." Vivian hissed at him to shut up. Mom's face drained of color, and Dad's jaw clenched so hard I swore I could hear his teeth grind from above. "Elena, stop being dramatic," Mom barked at last. "That house is far too big for you alone. We can help you manage it. That's what's best for all of us." And there it was. Not love, not guilt, control. I smiled down at them, sharp and unyielding. "Then you'd better start managing your disappointment, because this place doesn't recognize your name." And with that, I closed the window. From behind the curtains, I watched them shift like restless shadows. Mom's hands flailed as she whispered harshly to Dad. Vivian tried to light candles on the sagging cake, only for the wind to snuff them out. Ryan said nothing, just stood there with his arms crossed, staring up at the house like he was measuring it. A part of me wanted to open the door, to cave, to let them in if only to stop the neighbors' eyes from boring into us. That old instinct, to smooth things over, to keep the peace, tugged at me. But then I remembered every year of silence, every unanswered text, every forgotten birthday. The neighbors could watch. Let them. By dusk, their pounding softened to pleading, and their pleading to murmurs. My phone filled with voicemails. Clara sobbing that she only wanted to celebrate. Gerald warning me I'd regret this. Vivian begging me to think of appearances. And finally, one from Ryan. "Elena, don't push this too far. You don't know what you're starting." That one chilled me, because for the first time, I realized this wasn't just about them wanting back into my life. It was about them wanting into my house. That night, The lake house was drenched in moonlight, silver pouring across the water like melted glass. I sat on the dock with a wine glass in hand, my bare feet dangling above the ripples. Behind me, my phone buzzed nonstop, the glow of the screen casting a restless light across the planks. At first, the voicemails were warm. Fake laughter, forced sweetness, the syrup of a family trying to rebrand itself overnight. But sweetness curdled quickly. By the 20th message, the tone had shifted. "Elena," Dad's voice growled, "you're being selfish. You think you can handle something like this on your own? That house is too much responsibility. Call me back before this spirals out of control." Spirals out of control. The phrase sank into me like ice. What exactly did he mean? Responsibility? Or the fact that for once, the money wasn't his to claim? Then came Vivian's texts, long paragraphs at first, pretending to apologize, laced with phrases like, "We love you. You're making this harder than it needs to be. Think about how this looks to people." Then shorter, sharper bursts. "You're humiliating us. People are asking questions. Family forgives, Elena. Why can't you?" Forgiveness. The word almost made me laugh. Forgiveness implies an accident, a mistake. But 9 years of silence wasn't an accident. It was a decision. And then, just when I thought I'd heard it all, my phone lit up with a different name, my boss. "Elena," his voice carried warmth through the line. "Did you see my email? The client signed this morning. Your project closed the deal. That bonus we promised? It's already cleared. 6 figures. Congratulations. 6 figures. Real. Mine." The timing almost felt cruel in its irony. Here was the recognition I had worked for, earned, bled late nights and early mornings to achieve, delivered at the exact moment my family was outside, pounding like beggars who had lost their kingdom. When I hung up, I walked inside and turned on the security cameras. On the monitor, I saw them clearly. Mom pacing, wringing her hands, Dad smoking furiously, Vivian whispering furiously at Mark, whose shoulders sagged with defeat, and Ryan sitting on the hood of Dad's car, staring at the house with an expression I couldn't read. Their presence was suffocating, their voices muffled through the walls. But inside, the house hummed with peace. For years, I had begged to be seen, begged to be included, begged for scraps of attention. Now they were the ones begging, and for the first time, I realized maybe revenge wasn't about shouting or slamming doors or even grand gestures. Maybe revenge was silence, steel gates that never opened. The next morning, the siege escalated. I woke to the sound of balloons squeaking against metal, and Clara's voice, sharp and breaking, all at once. "Elena, please, you're humiliating us. The neighbors can see." Neighbors, of course. That was the real wound. Not my loneliness, not their absence, but the humiliation of being exposed, their perfect facade crumbling for anyone to witness. I brewed my coffee slowly, deliberately, the aroma filling the kitchen as I let their cries echo outside. Finally, I pressed the intercom. My voice was calm, steady, colder than the lake wind. "Do you remember my 21st birthday?" I waited at home, cake melting on the counter. Nobody came. You said you lost track of time. That was the year I stopped believing you'd ever remember me. This house, this life, this peace, none of you had a hand in it. You don't get to share it. Not now. Not ever. Vivian slammed her fist against the gate, mascara streaking down her cheeks. "You're cruel, Elena. Family forgives." I tilted my head, sipped my coffee, and let my voice cut clean. Family doesn't forget birthdays for a decade. Family doesn't show up only when money's on the table. The balloon slipped from her grip, floating upward until they vanished into the sky. By afternoon, the tone outside shifted again. Pleading gave way to threats. My phone buzzed with new voicemails, each one more desperate than the last. "Elena, we'll come back with a lawyer," Dad barked in one. "That house should have been ours. We're not letting you make a fool out of this family. Ours." The word made me laugh bitterly. For years, I was theirs only when it was convenient, when bills needed covering, when kids needed watching, when errands piled up. But when it came to celebrations, to simple acknowledgement, I was invisible. And now suddenly, something I earned was ours. I pulled up the deed from my laptop. My name, Elena Marlowe, inked in bold across the page. Final, unchallenged, untouchable. I traced the letters with my fingertip. a reminder that for once, nothing they said could erase me. But then the unexpected happened. As twilight painted the lake in violet and gold, Ryan stepped forward. Unlike the rest of them, who shouted and begged, he looked straight into the security camera and spoke. His voice was low, almost calm, but heavy with something sharper than anger. "You shouldn't have done this without us, Elena. A house like this. It's not something one person keeps to themselves. You've started something you can't finish." My stomach clenched. Ryan had always been the quiet one, the one who floated on the edges of family drama, never fully choosing sides. For years, I'd told myself he was different, that maybe he understood, even if he never defended me. But hearing him now, his words cut deeper than all the shouting. "Was it you?" I whispered to the empty room, though I already knew. He had been the one to tell them. That's why they descended on me so fast. That's why their voices carried the edge of betrayal disguised as urgency. The realization stung like betrayal layered on betrayal. My parents had forgotten me. Vivian had erased me. But Ryan, he had sold me out. I pressed the intercom again, my voice steady, though my hands shook. "So that's what this is. You didn't come here for me. You came here for the house, for the money. And Ryan, you made sure they knew. Didn't you?" He didn't flinch. He just folded his arms, the faintest smirk tugging at his lips. "You're not the only one who deserves something, Elena." My heart thudded painfully against my ribs. The air between us was no longer just about forgotten birthdays or missed candles. This was about greed, envy, control. And it had a new face, my brother's. That night, as I locked every door and shut every window, I realized something chilling. This wasn't simply a family reunion gone wrong. This was a siege, and they weren't leaving without a fight. Morning broke with a crimson sunrise bleeding across the lake, but instead of peace, it carried the low hum of voices outside my gate. I switched on the security monitor and saw them all still there. Mom's hair disheveled, Dad's shirt wrinkled, Vivian clutching her phone with trembling fingers, Mark pacing with his arms crossed, and Ryan standing tall, defiant, like he was the ringleader of this circus. The pounding started again, this time more coordinated, almost like they had rehearsed it. My phone buzzed on the counter. Texts, missed calls, a group chat revived from the dead, flooding with messages that tried to paint me as the villain. "Elena, stop this madness. You're tearing us apart. You've always been selfish. Selfish." That word slid under my skin, and for a moment, I almost laughed. Selfish, after a decade of giving. My time, my money, my loyalty, while they forgot me on the one day I needed nothing but their presence. I brewed my coffee slowly, deliberately, letting the machine hiss and gurgle over their shouting. Then I stepped to the intercom, my voice calm, slicing through their noise like a blade. "Do you remember my 22nd birthday?" I asked. Silence fell outside. I sat in that empty apartment with balloons I bought myself. No one came, no one called. You didn't forget. You chose not to come, and year after year you kept choosing. I let the words hang heavy before continuing. "This house, this life, it isn't yours to claim. It isn't ours. It's mine. And the door you're pounding on? It will never open for you again." Mom's sobs cracked through the speaker. Vivian slammed her palm against the gate until the metal rang. Ryan stepped closer, his face pale but his eyes sharp. "You think you've won, Elena? Houses can burn, money can disappear. Family?" I cut him off. Family doesn't disappear for 10 years and return only when there's something to take. Vivian's balloon slipped from her hand, drifting upward, pale shapes against the morning sky. They all froze, watching them vanish, as though the air itself had mocked them. I didn't wait for their response. I pressed the button, killing the feed, and turned my back on their voices. Inside, the lakehouse glowed with light. I sat by the fire, poured another glass of wine, and opened my laptop. One post, one truth, finally set free. Family that forgets you for a decade doesn't deserve to remember you when fortune arrives. Today, I choose myself, and I will keep choosing myself. Within hours, notifications poured in. Friends, colleagues, even strangers, all writing words I had waited years to hear. Brave, inspiring, proud of you. For the first time, I wasn't invisible. As dusk settled, I powered off my phone. Silence filled the house. Outside, I knew they were still there, still shouting, still scrambling for control. But their noise no longer mattered. I leaned back in my chair, watching the flames curl and dance, and whispered into the quiet, "For once, I am unforgettable."